Hello, hello everybody. Um, welcome, welcome to today's live stream. If you don't know who I am Axel from Get Speaking English, and today we're going to be checking out this article here, called "Ultra Fast Fashion is a Disturbing Trend Undermining Efforts to Make the Whole Industry More Sustainable." So, for those of you who don't know, maybe you're a little new here. Recently, I've been sharing a lot of posts and activities and videos and all sorts of things all about sustainability on my social media channels. And I've been offering conversational classes based on articles. So, this is one of the articles I'm doing conversation classes about. So, I thought it would be useful to go through this article. We're going to go through it together. I will read it. You'll be able to hear the pronunciation. I'm going to discuss some useful phrases and vocabulary in here. So there's a lot of great words in here and a lot of useful words for discussing sustainability and fast fashion in particular. And then I'm going to take this video, I'm going to upload it to YouTube so you can re-watch the video if you'd like, study it. You can practice your new phrases and vocabulary while answering some of the discussion questions I share, or also the daily speaking prompts. So you can do that, or you can book a class with me and we can discuss this topic together and the ideas addressed in here. So I'll leave some information about how you can do that. And actually I'll put some information up here too as well. Here we go. So you're more than welcome to follow me on Telegram, where I will be sharing the articles there. You can either go to my website to learn how to book a conversation class with me, or you can also go directly to my booking page and do it that way as well. You can book, one class, you can book several. I typically have a lot of things to talk about with students. So, so if you would like to sort of discuss this topic for a couple lessons, that's an option as well. But yeah, so like I said, we're going to go through, we're going to read this. So just an FYI, if you are here on Facebook, I have the comments up so I can see them, so feel free to say hello. I love when people say hi. This live lesson will not be as interactive as some of the other live lessons I've done in the past, so just an FYI. However, if these become more popular and more people come out and if more people are willing to participate, then I would love to add more interactive elements to these live article reading streams. So if you find it helpful and if you would like that to happen, you could leave a like, leave a comment, you can share it with friends, whatever you want to do to just show your support. That would be really fantastic. Anyways, okay, so let's just get moving then. Like I said, we're going to be reading this article. Ultra fast fashion is a disturbing trend undermining efforts to make the whole industry more sustainable. And I just thought, before anything, we should discuss really quickly maybe what fast fashion is. So typically fast fashion is it involves, rapid, very quick turnaround times for fashion. So, new products, new articles of clothing, new designs will be released every few weeks. And they do it really quickly to keep up with the latest trends, right? And usually that approach is a little problematic. Because the clothes are only intended to be worn for a very short amount of time and creates a lot of waste, and there's a lot of problems with that. It can be very bad for the environment. And here, we're not just talking about fast fashion, but we're talking about ultra fast fashion, and anything ultra, this is to the extreme, right? So so we're talking about companies that have taken fast fashion and they have just like pushed it to the extreme, push it to the maximum. So here, ultra fast fashion instead, these are the companies that are able to use technology, maybe. So, you know, they'll use data, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, all sorts of things, digital devices in order to produce clothing at an even faster rate. So they are producing clothes like, you know, every few hours, or, you know, every other day there is something new coming out. So yeah, so it's completely crazy right now. So that's what this article is going to be about. All about that. Yeah. So right, so we have ultra fast fashion. It's a disturbing trend that is undermining efforts to make the whole industry more sustainable. So the word undermine is kind of interesting. When you undermine something, you make it weaker or maybe less effective. And you do that through sort of a gradual process or through repeated efforts. So, you know, we have this overall effort to try to make the industry more sustainable, and these guys are just kind of destroying that with their with the things that they're doing. So that's what it means to undermine something. Yeah, so to make something weaker kind of over time. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to read this. I'll go back. I'm going to read it paragraph for paragraph, I think, and then I will go back, look at some of the interesting phrases, the vocabulary. I will put our notes there, and at the end of this, I will organize everything into a document, so you can have that for a reference. Okay. So since the 1990s, fast fashion has enabled everyday people to buy the latest catwalk trends. But the sheer volume of garments being whipped up, sold, and soon discarded is contributing to a global sustainability crisis. All right, yeah. So yeah, so right. So since here, so fast fashion, like we said, those the way of producing clothing very quickly has let people get the latest catwalk trends. And we might know that that catwalk is that very sort of the we would call it the runway as well, but that very long platform that models will walk up and down on during a fashion show. So that's stage, basically. Yeah, so they can get, you know, the clothing that they see on in the fashion shows. But the sheer volume, so just like the crazy volume of garments being whipped up, sold, and discarded is contributing to a global sustainability crisis. So a garment here is a great word. It's just another alternative word for a piece of clothing. So that's kind of a handy one, maybe, to add to your vocabulary. So just a garment refers to one piece of clothing or an article of clothing. So garments refer to a number of them. Okay, so the number of garments being whipped up, so created, sold, and discarded, thrown away, is contributing to a global sustainability crisis. Okay, Now, just when the fashion industry should be waking up and breaking free of this vicious cycle, it's heading in the opposite direction. We're on a downward spiral from fast fashion to ultra fast fashion. The amount of natural resources consumed and waste produced is snowballing. All right. Like I said, like just the fashion industry should be waking up and breaking free of something. If you break free of something, you're kind of liberated from it, from a vicious cycle. So this is kind of a great collocation, I thought. Something vicious, that's something that harms you, it hurts you. Maybe causing physical pain or emotional pain. And then we have this great collocation here. So a vicious cycle, sort of like this harmful pattern that's happening. So great collocation there, vicious cycle. So we want to get away from the vicious cycle, from the bad habits, the bad patterns, and go in the opposite direction. But instead, we are on a downward spiral. And you might know, like, a spiral is sort of this. Can you see that? Yes, you can see that. One of these things, the little curvy thing. So that is a spiral. And obviously we're going downward. Here, this idiom is kind of, we would use it for, to describe a situation that is continually getting worse and worse. So we're on a downward spiral. The situation is getting worse and worse. So because we're going from fast fashion to ultra fast fashion, which is even more destructive, more extreme. The amount of natural resources consumed and waste produced is snowballing. So here, this one means to accumulate, like it is increasing at a rapid rate. So you might know, like, the snowball, what kids might make, and then you could like take that and put it on snow and push it, and it makes the snowball even bigger as it picks up more snow. If you're in a cold country like Canada, where I am, where there's lots of snow, that would be how you would make like snowmen and stuff. So it just means, yeah, to accumulate, it gets bigger over time. So we would say something is snowballing. Okay. Ultra fast fashion is marked by even faster production cycles, blink and you'll miss it trends, and poor labor practices. Brands like Shein, Boohoo, and Cider are liberated from the concept of seasonal collections. Instead, they are producing garments at breakneck speeds and self-generating micro trends such as balletcore, Barbiecore, or even mermaidcore. At the same time, there is limited transparency or accountability around clothing supply chains. All right, so lots of great words here related to fast fashion. So it's marked by, so it has these features of a faster production cycle. So we're talking about production cycle. We mean the amount of time basically it takes to produce an article of clothing. So, and get it to the consumer as well. So from, the creation to maybe the design, or like, the idea, the creation, the design, maybe the first prototype, to producing it, selling it, all of that. So basically, the amount of time it takes, and in fast fashion, that was, a few weeks, right? And now we can do it even quicker. So faster production cycles, blink and you'll miss it trends. So if you blink your eye, you'll miss it. It's so fast. And poor labor practices. So labor referring to work. And here, labor practices kind of has anything to do with either, working conditions and the wages that the workers receive. So in this case, obviously, the workers are subjected to, they don't get paid very well, right? Maybe they have poor safety standards in the factories, things like that. So it's labor practices related to all of that, right? So all of these brands are liberated from the concept of seasonal collections. So they are free of the concept of seasonal collections. And a collection here, that just refers to sort of like a set of clothing. So, how once upon a time, clothing companies or brands would create and release a number of different pieces, and they would kind of do it in line with the different natural seasons, right? So here they don't need to do that anymore. They are free of that. They no longer worry about releasing collections of clothing. Instead, they are producing garments at breakneck speeds. So another kind of great little idiom here. Something happens at a breakneck speed. It means that it happens very, 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 very quickly. So they're producing garments super fast and self-generating microtrends, such as all of these great things. At the same time, there is limited transparency and accountability around clothing and supply chains. So again, great words. So something transparency here. If something is transparent, we can see through it, right? So like a window, for example, right? Or maybe like a glass, right? Those are things that are obviously transparent. You can see through them. But when we're talking about transparency in relation to organizations and companies or things like that, we're talking about the idea that they do things in a way that it's not a secret, right? So they are very open, they're very honest about what they're doing. So, but here we're saying that there is limited transparency. So they are not being honest enough. They're keeping a lot of secrets. And that's definitely a concern. So transparency, basically not having any secrets, and accountability has to do with being held responsible for your actions. So if you're held accountable for something, you are responsible. You are, the person that, you admit that you do your actions, right? Okay. All right, so they have limited transparency, limited accountability around their clothing supply chains. And a supply chain has to do sort of with like the sequence of companies and organizations that are involved in creating a product. So, so those people involved in maybe like sourcing the materials, for example, to designing it, to putting it together, to then shipping it to the store and where it gets sent to the customer. All of that is the supply chain. So basically all the people, all the organizations, the companies, the people involved in getting a product, making it, and then getting it to the consumer, getting it to the person who uses it in the end. So there's not a lot of transparency, a lot of accountability around their supply chains. Okay. Yeah, okay. And welcome, Miguel. It's good to see you. Okay. So, the overproduction and consumption of clothing cannot be allowed to continue. Without change, the industry will account for 26% of the world's carbon budget for limiting global warming to 2 degrees Celsius by 2050. The fashion industry must take responsibility for its action. Policymakers also have an important role to play in enabling the necessary shift towards a more responsible and circular fashion economy. And let's not forget the power of consumers. Okay, so some more great words in here. For starters, overproduction. So when companies basically produce too much of something, a lot more than needed. So overproduction definitely will come up. Maybe if we're talking about sustainability, and the consumption of clothing cannot be allowed to continue. So here, consumption has to do with the using of resources and goods and things. So here we're talking about the using of clothing, right, and the materials required to make those clothes. But yeah, we're consumption. The idea of consuming something. We consume something. We use something, right? So without change, the industry will account for the fashion industry must take responsibility for its actions. So another great collocation here, you take responsibility for something. If you take responsibility for something, you say that you are the cause of something. You admit that you were the person who made it happen. To take responsibility for something, you basically have to take ownership of it and admit that you did it. So policymakers also have an important role to play in enabling the necessary shift towards a more responsible and circular fashion economy. Yeah, so I'm highlighting this word because this is going to come up later in the article as well. So it's worth discussing really quickly what a circular economy is. So it's basically a model of producing things, but in a way that resources are reused and things like that. So right now, the current economy, sort of, we produce things, but then we throw them away, right? And the resources are sort of just disposed of, or they're not used in a very great way, right? Whereas a circular economy instead would focus on sort of sharing, or maybe not sharing, but like reusing, recycling, refurbishing, making sure that the resources are constantly sort of like kept back into circulation, and that they're not just immediately discarded they're not discarded. So instead of just like using something and getting rid of it, we're trying to make sure that those resources are being used as long as possible. So we talk about a circular economy, that's what they mean. So they're going to refer to that a number of different times in this article. So they want to sort of make sure that fashion focuses on a circular economy, and we're able to do that. And let's not forget the power of consumers. So consumers here, these are the people responsible for consumption, basically. So, you know, these are the people that are using the goods and the resources, right? They are the ones that consume things, that use things, all that consumption. So great, different, a quick little review of the word forms there of that. Okay. All right. So cheap clothing at what cost? It was once thought the pandemic would trigger a transition to a more sustainable fashion industry. Unfortunately, in reality, the industry is getting worse, not better. So they thought that the pandemic would trigger, that they would cause a transition to a more sustainable future, or sustainable fashion industry. But that did not happen. Most ultra fast fashion brands emerged in the late 2010s, following the most well-known, Shein, founded in 2008. These online direct-to-consumer brands exploded in popularity during lockdowns, with Shein holding the title for the world's most popular brand in 2020. Right. So the most ultra fast fashion brands emerged. They started in the late 2010s. And these online direct to consumer brands, so they are just shipping, there's no stores, if things go directly to the consumers. They exploded in popularity, got very, very, very popular during the lockdowns, with Shein holding the title of the world's most popular brands. So if you own the title of something, it basically just, it's kind of a fancy way to say that you own something. A title, like, literally is basically like a little paper that, you know, says that you own a car or a home, for example. But we could also use it for here, for example. So they are the most popular brand, and they hold that title. So they basically they have that title. Established brands such as Gap introduced 12,000 new items a year, and H&M 25,000. But Shein leaves them in the dust, listing 1.3 million items in the same amount of time. How is this even possible? All right, so established brands, so ones that have been around for a very long time, introduce a lot of items in a year, but Shein leaves them in the dust. So, so if you leave somebody in the dust, or yeah, if you leave someone in the dust, that means that you easily outdo them, like you defeat them, or you're just way better than them, basically. So Shein leaves them in the dust, listing 1.3 million items in the same amount of time. So how is this even possible? The ultra-fast fashion model thrives on data and addictive social media marketing to create insatiable consumer demand. So the ultra-fast fashion model thrives on data. Something that thrives, does really, really well. Maybe it grows really quickly. It just does really well. So it takes a lot of data, basically information from the consumers, from trends and everything online, and addictive social media marketing to create insatiable consumer demand. So insatiable is kind of interesting. It comes from the word, like, to sate, or I guess be sated. And if you are sated, basically, it means that it's usually like related to food, for example. Like if you eat a lot and then you feel really satisfied and you feel kind of happy and comfortable. That's what it means to be sated. You're very satisfied. Usually because you ate enough or whatever. You have everything you need. But here we have like the opposite of that. We have insatiable. So here in this, so they mean, this consumer demand, they're never going to be able to satisfy it. So something insatiable, impossible to satisfy, they'll never be able to meet the demand. Absolutely impossible. So it is insatiable. Okay. But Shein's incredibly low prices, its website has thousands of items under $5. I think this is Australian. Come at a human cost. The company's own 2021 Sustainability and Social Impact Report, later removed from the site, found only 2% of its factories and warehouses met its own worker safety standards, with the rest requiring corrective action. All right, yeah, so they have incredibly low prices, but it comes at a human cost. So we say something has sort of like a human cost, that it means it's negatively impacting people in their lives, right? So they had this sustainability report that found that only 2% of its factories and warehouses met its own worker safety standards. So the factory, this is the building, the facility where something is made. In the warehouses, a warehouse is a place where things are stored. So very important, kind of important words there, talking about fashion at least. Factory, a place where something is made, and a warehouse, a place where something is stored. So they only found that 2% of these facilities met its own worker safety standards, with the rest requiring corrective action. The brand has also foregone in-house designers. Instead, it works with independent suppliers who can design and manufacture a garment in 2 weeks. Right, so I want to talk about this word really quickly. Well, actually, maybe a couple of these things. So designers, obviously, these are the people that are designing the clothing, right? But if they work in-house, if something happens in-house, it means that it happens on location, like it happens in the building itself. However, this brand has foregone in-house designers. So this is actually the past participle of a verb. It comes from forego. If you forego something, it means that you decide not to have it. So in this case, yeah. So in this case, they've decided not to use designers in their facility in-house. So they have decided not to do that. So they have forgone them. So forgo, that's gonna be the so like the infinitive, right? Forwent, the past, and forgone. But these are good ones to know at a C1 level. So they've gotten rid of in-house designers. But instead it works with independent suppliers, so people who work on their own independently, who can design and manufacture a garment in 2 weeks. That note there as well. Something happens in-house, happens on location. The result is an incredibly profitable business model. Shein offered Shein filed for an initial public offering, IPO, last year to value the brand at $136 billion US, up from $2.5 billion US in 2018. All right, yeah, so that's a very profitable, like makes a lot of money, business model. So like how they run their business basically. Yeah, and they were able to like list at and have reached very high value for the company. Shifting from fast to ultra fast fashion has serious environmental and social consequences. This includes even more exploitative labor practices. Shein garment workers reportedly work 75-hour weeks, and warehouses operate 24/7. So changing from ultra fast fashion has serious environmental and social consequences, so really big impacts. This includes even more exploitative labor practices. So we could probably see that this comes from the verb like to exploit, right? So, and if you exploit something, it means that you use something. You can exploit something in a good way, but usually, especially in this context, you use it for like a negative thing. So you use something unfairly, basically, for your own advantage. So here, the labor practices are basically, using people to make a profit and things like that. So something exploitative, we're basically like using people or something unfairly to get what we want. And if something happens 24/7, another great little collocation here, that just means that it happens all the time, day and night, never stops. So they are open all the time. They are open 24/7. And that's a great collocation to add to your, or a little phrase to add to your vocabulary if you don't have it already. Ignoring the shift isn't just a fashion faux pas. Doing so jeopardizes national efforts for a more sustainable fashion industry. So, couple of great words here. So ignoring the shift isn't just a fashion faux pas. So I know the pronunciation of that is a little weird, right? We don't pronounce the X. It's faux pas. And these are basically things like I wrote it there. Words and actions that are considered like impolite, or they're kind of rude in society. So a fashion faux pas would basically kind of like maybe wearing something that's really out of style or something like that. That would be a fashion faux pas. So it's not good, considered socially acceptable basically. But doing so jeopardizes national efforts for a more sustainable fashion industry. And if you jeopardize something, you basically are putting a plan or something in danger. So we have all these efforts basically to make fashion more sustainable, and it's basically ruining that, or it's putting those efforts into danger, is what they're saying. All right. A seamless transition to sustainability. A national product stewardship scheme called Seamless promises to transform the industry, or the fashion industry, by 2030. So national product stewardship scheme. So a plan, basically. called Seamless wants to change it. So a couple things to talk about here. Okay, so first of all, we have they're creating a plan basically, and anything to do with stewardship kind of has to do with carefully managing something. So you hear about like environmental stewardship and things like that. They mean managing the environment, managing environmental resources, checking in, making sure that people are using those resources responsibly, they're taking care of it, things like that. So stewardship has to do with anything like kind of like that, just like carefully overseeing, supervising something. So here, this stewardship scheme is just basically this program. It's like a program that it's a program that's going to make sure that companies, organizations, people working in the fashion industry are being really responsible, not hurting the environment, are taking steps to reduce the negative impact of their actions, basically. So that's what we're talking about here. And we have this company called Seamless, which is kind of a funny little play on words. So on one hand, a seam, literally, like, so what a seam in clothing is kind of like where two pieces of fabric are connected to one another. So that is a seam. But seamless also, when we're using it as an adjective, means if you do something seamlessly or something is seamless, that means it's done without there's no problems, there's no little hiccups. Maybe you don't even see it, like it's really effortless. So here, the seamless transition to sustainability, it means that they want to do sort of like this transition that people don't even really notice. It just sort of like happens over time. It's really kind of like natural, really easy to do. And it doesn't really like disrupt people's lives or anything like that, like really suddenly. So something seamless, done very effortlessly, and we don't see any interruptions, any problems, nothing like that. All right, yeah, so they want to do all of that. They want to do it seamlessly, and again, play on words, because a seam is like where two pieces of fabric are sewn together in an article of clothing. The idea is to bring fashion into the circular economy. Ultimately, that means zero waste, but in the meantime, raw materials would be kept in the supply chain for as long as possible by designing and minimizing waste. So again, they want to bring it back to the circular economy, so making sure that those resources are staying in the system as long as possible. Ultimately, so at the end, that would mean zero waste, so no waste. But in the meantime, raw materials, so those basic, the unaltered materials, would be kept in the supply chain for as long as possible. And they're doing that by designing out and minimizing waste. I thought this was kind of interesting. This isn't really like a word, like a common collocation or anything like that. But if you verb out something, it's like you're trying to like reduce, get rid of something, basically. So in this case, they're going to try to design the clothes in a way, I think, so that maybe they cut the pieces really close together or something like that, so that there is next to no waste, basically, when they are cutting, when they are designing, creating the clothing, and stuff like that. So members will contribute a 4-cent levy for every clothing item they produce or import. And a levy here, that's just a tax, basically, government tax. So yeah, members will contribute, so they're going to pay a levy for every article of clothing they produce or import, so bring in from other countries. These funds go into clothing collection, research, recycling projects, and education campaigns. Big W, David Jones, Lorna Jane, Rip Curl, R.M. Williams, the iconic Susan Group, and Cotton On are Seamless Foundation members. So each has contributed 100,000 Australian dollars to the development of the scheme. So all of these people have contributed a bunch of money to the plan, right? The scheme, the plan. As one of the world's first industry-led collective product stewardship initiatives for clothing textiles, Seamless presents a unique opportunity to drive change towards a more sustainable and circular fashion industry. So, yeah, so it's one of the world's first industry-led collective things for clothing, textiles. So textiles will come up a lot, talking about fashion. And textiles refers to fabric. It refers to woven fabric or knitted fabric, more specifically. So anything textiles related has to do with like woven, knitted fabric. And just like the raw like fabric basically, which then gets like turned into clothes, right? Yeah, so the foundation presents a unique opportunity to drive change. So another great collocation there, but basically to make change happen towards a more sustainable and circular fashion industry. But there is a risk. Ultra-fast fashion brands may act as free riders in Seamless, benefiting from the investment and initiatives without making meaningful contributions. Shein and others will continue putting more and more product on the market, which will need to be dealt with at the end of its short life. But if they fail to commit to the scheme, they won't be the ones paying for that. So there is a risk, so there's a chance that fashion brands may act as free riders in Seamless. So the word free rider isn't really a thing. It's not like a word that you would need to know in your vocabulary, but I wanted to talk about where they're getting this from, because they've kind of made this noun out of sort of a more common idiom. We would say to take a free ride. And if you take a free ride or get a free ride, it basically means that you benefit from a situation, but you don't actually do anything. Like you don't put any of the work in or anything like that. You don't do any of the effort. So here they're calling these people that would get the benefits, but without, putting any effort or work into it, they're calling them free riders. But yeah. But, we get a free ride. That's what it means. You would get something without having to actually do anything. Another one that's more common, maybe, that I wanted to talk about is a freeloader. That is also more common, I would say. And a freeloader is basically somebody who doesn't pay their fair share. So maybe they go to dinner with a group of friends and then they get out of paying the bill. And they decide not to, chip in with the bill, so other people have to pay for them, and that's a freeloader. So that's a little bit more common. Also a free ride, to take a free ride or get a free ride, way more common. But yeah, they're worried that these people are going to act as free riders in Seamless, benefiting from the investment, so all like the money, the energy, the resources, the time, and the initiatives without making meaningful contributions. So they're not going to do anything. Shein and others will continue putting more and more product on the market, which will need to be dealt with at the end of its short life. So again, I'm narrowing in on this verb as well, just like we had foregone earlier. Great C1 level verb. Here, this comes from deal, right? So again, the past participle and the past form, we need to remember this one as well. So to deal, dealt, dealt. Yeah, so they need to be dealt with, they need to be taken care of at the end of their short life. But if they fail to commit to the scheme or to the plan, they won't be the ones paying for that. Okay. Seamless must also recognize ultra-fast fashion in tackling the industry's environmental and social sustainability challenges. At the moment, they're only talking about fast fashion and ignoring the rise of ultra-fast fashion. Their global scan, for example, includes a discussion of fast fashion and no mention of ultra-fast fashion. Yeah, so Seamless, they must recognize ultra-fast fashion in tackling the challenges. So another collocation here, we would typically tackle a problem. So that's a good collocation to know, tackle a problem. But yeah, at the moment they're only focusing on fast fashion and they're not focusing on the rise of ultra fast fashion. So in their global scan or their global sort of report or survey, I guess, includes a discussion of fast fashion, but there is nothing that talks about ultra fast fashion. This also points back to a lack of data more broadly in the industry, but in the case of Seamless, it could have a big impact if this growing market segment is ignored. So, like they say, there's a lack of data more broadly, so something broad is very wide. So just overall, there is a lack of information available, basically, probably because it's all so new. And this could have a big impact if this global market segment is ignored. So a segment of something is just basically a piece of something, like a section of something. So a segment. Shein and Temu are estimated to earn a combined $2 billion in sales in 2024, with customers from all walks of life. So we talk about people from all walks of life. From all walks of life. We meet people of different maybe ages, different genders, different like economic situations, different jobs, positions, basically just like everybody. So people from all walks of life, doesn't matter. It could be like old, maybe like rich or poor. All of these people are basically using these companies. That's what they're saying. All the people. The critical crackdown. So some brands are actively engaging and working towards a more sustainable future, but others, such as Temu, are learning from Shein and looking to emulate their business model. So, and if you emulate something, you're going to copy it, reproduce it. And I think I mentioned really quickly, but the business model, that's just basically sort of the very specific way that a business creates money, like how it does business, how it creates revenue. So they're looking to basically copy how they do business. The transition to a more sustainable and responsible fashion industry requires a greater understanding of ultra-fast fashion, urgent systemic changes, and collective efforts. So the transition, so the change to a more sustainable and responsible fashion industry. These were understanding of obviously fast fashion, the urgent systemic changes and collective efforts. So anything that happens on a systemic level, that's kind of like sort of like the very basic levels. So we talk about systemic changes, kind of like just basic changes in how society or how something operates, right? So the basic operations maybe, or the qualities, or even, just what's important, considered important. So they're saying that there needs to be changes in that, just how people think about fashion, think about fast fashion and things like that. And it requires a collective effort. So collective requiring many, many, many people to work together. So a collective effort. Lots of individuals, organizations, all working together for the same goal. The Institute for Sustainable Futures, where I work, is a founding member of an international academic research network aimed at tackling the complexities of ultra-fast fashion. That includes how ultra-fast fashion is affecting the livelihoods of garment workers, how it's fueling textile waste, and underscoring the industry's struggle to embrace circular economy principles. We're also investigating how to reshape consumer behavior away from social media-fueled hauls towards more sustainable consumption, particularly among Gen Z consumers. So this institute where the author works, they're a founding member, so they're one of the people who originally set it up. This organization is one of the founding members of like this network. Right, so they are aimed at tackling, again, we tackle a problem, but the complexities of ultra fast fashion. So something complex, we know, is kind of very complicated, right? So if we're talking about the complexities of something, we're talking about all the various sort of factors and different things that make something complex or complicated. So they're tackling the complexities of ultra-fast fashion. That includes how ultra-fast fashion is affecting the livelihoods of government or garment workers. So garment workers are people creating the clothing, the garments, right? When we talk about livelihoods, we mean just like their lives and how they make a living, right? Somebody's livelihood. How they make a living, and how it's fueling, how it's like driving, creating textile waste and textiles to do with the fabric. And if you fuel something, you kind of encourage it to happen, right? And they're kind of underlining the industry's struggle to embrace circular economy principles. We're also investigating how to reshape, so how to change consumer behavior. So how people buy or how they feel about products. And they want to try to convince people to not do hauls. So maybe you've seen hauls, like fashion hauls on social media. That's basically when, like, a haul is when people buy large amounts of something at once. So in this case, we're talking about fashion, right? But I suppose it could be anything. I would say in my day-to-day life, I would more commonly talk about maybe a grocery store haul or grocery haul, a food haul. But yeah, so it's basically when you buy something in like large amounts all at once. Yeah. So they're trying to convince people to not do hauls, and shift them towards sustainable consumption instead. Okay. Last month, Federal Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek announced a potential intervention, perhaps by introducing minimum environmental standards or a clothing levy by July. So, last month, I'm not sure when this article came out, but they announced an intervention. And so an intervention it's like a kind of like an act or sort of an initiative that you take to either like improve a situation or to make it not get worse, basically. So yeah, so they're going to try to intervene with an intervention, take some action to try to correct the situation or at least prevent it from getting worse by introducing minimum environmental standards or a clothing levy, so I get a tax by July. The clock is ticking. It is time to lay the foundation for a more sustainable and just fashion industry. Australia has a rich fashion history and is home to many leading local brands, many of whom have gone global. These brands show us what is possible when good design, sustainability, and innovation drive an industry. All right, so if we say that the clock is ticking, we mean that there's not a lot of time. And they want to lay the foundation, so they want to lay the groundwork, like the basic things needed for a more sustainable and a just fashion industry. So here, just is being used to mean fair. Something just is, something just is fair. So where everybody's treated equally, basically. So they want the industry, the fashion industry, to become more fair, basically. So a just fashion industry. Australia has a rich fashion history. It is home to many leading local brands, many of whom have gone global. So to go global, just another way to say that they've expanded their business worldwide. So to go global would be something we'd say. And these brands show us what is possible when good design, sustainability, and innovation drive an industry. So innovation has to do with the creation of new ideas and new ways of thinking or doing something. So innovation would like drive an industry, like push an industry. So ultimately, our collective choices wield immense power. By understanding the consequences of our fashion habits and advocating for change, we could all be catalysts for a more sustainable and just fashion industry. So ultimately, at the end of the day, our collective choices, so the choices we all make, wield immense power. If you wield power, if you wield something, it's like you have it and then you use it to sort of like influence or control something. So if something wields power, it can kind of have control over something. So that's kind of a great little collocation there. By understanding the consequences, so the impacts of our fashion habits, and advocating for change. If you advocate for something, it means you support a cause or something, or you promote it. So in this case, they're saying, you know, we need to step up, we need to ask for change, or and support that. So we could advocate, ask for change, and we could all be catalysts for a more sustainable and just fashion industry. If you're a catalyst for something, you are like the person or the event. You're sort of the thing that triggers change to happen. Usually a very important change. So we can all be catalysts. We can all be part of the things that create positive change. Yeah, we can be catalysts for a more sustainable and just fashion industry. All right, cool. So, all right, so that is this article here. Actually, there was one more little thing that I wanted to talk about, even though I know this is getting a little bit long. But there was an interesting thing up here that kind of caught my eye, like way at the beginning, that I thought would be fun to talk about. This phrase here, blink and you'll miss it, trends. Yeah, so blink and you'll miss it, trends. An example of what we would call a compound adjective, right? So, and usually we know more, like, we're more familiar with compound adjectives in, like here, for example, we have the ultra fast fashion, right? So here's a compound adjective. It's a adjective made up of multiple words, usually two, right? But we can see down here that we've done it with multiple words, which is kind of interesting. And they're all held together with, well, usually they're held together with a hyphen. So we use the hyphens basically just to indicate that the entire thing is one descriptive unit. Yeah, and there's a couple funny, well, I wanted to talk about this one because I thought it was really funny, because most people are very very familiar, you know, with like the little ones, right? So here, ultra fast fashion, so we mean, you know, fashion, which is ultra fast, which is very fast, right? We also had down here, let's see, that we have the direct to consumer brands, right? So this one's a little bit longer, but basically brands that are delivered direct to consumers, so they get them directly. Yeah. But here though, we can see that we've taken sort of an entire sentence almost, or like an entire an entire idea basically, and we've crammed it into a compound adjective. So I thought that was really interesting, and that's kind of one of like a fun thing that you can do in English. So here we have this blink and you'll miss it trends. That would be, you know, trends that you'll miss if you blink. But yeah, I just basically wanted to highlight that that is a thing that you can do in English. I don't recommend putting that in your essays or anything like that, but it is kind of a funny, interesting little curious thing that you could do in English. But since we're talking about compound adjectives, let's look at this one. Actually, I don't even know if I can find it. There we go. Members will contribute a 4-cent levy for every clothing item they produce or import. So here, a 4-cent levy, I want you to notice that there is no S. It's not 4 cents levy, but it is a 4-cent levy. So So yeah, so a 4-cent levy we know would be a levy of 4 cents, right? A levy of 4 cents. But when we take this, when we take the idea, the 4 cents, and we put it as a compound adjective, we always drop the plurals. So a levy of 4 cents becomes a 4-cent levy. Another example, a road that's 12 miles long would become a 12-mile road. Or you know, people often talk about ages, right? So a boy that's 4 years old becomes a 4-year-old boy. So this is something that's important to keep in mind. And I hear errors. Usually when people are talking, they will say things like a 4 years old boy, but that's incorrect. So when we use it as a compound adjective, there are no S's. Yeah, so it's a 4-year-old boy, not a 4-year-old's boy. A 4-cent levy, not a 4 cents levy. Yeah. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Yeah, even up here we can see here too, like brands that are direct to consumers becomes just like direct to consumer, OS, brand. So that's really important. So keep that in mind when you are speaking and get into that habit. Okay, anyways, I've talked for a while. I hope that you have found this helpful. Again, I definitely recommend rewatching this again. Yeah, I definitely recommend rewatching this article again, or sure, I recommend reading it again, but I also recommend checking out this video again. Work on their pronunciation. I'm sure there's been some new words in here. There are some interesting ones like faux pas, so make sure that you're pronouncing those ones correctly. Make sure that you're getting your syllable stress accurately. And then, yeah, I will leave the notes below so you can have that as well. Study the vocabulary, work on your pronunciation. And then if you would like some direct feedback from B, you're more than welcome to book a class, and we can get speaking about this topic together, or we can get speaking about other topics about sustainability as well, too. But yeah, okay. Thanks again for coming out, those of you who came out. And I will see you next time, probably in about 2 weeks. I have a few more articles about sustainability I want to look at. So in 2 weeks, I will probably be doing another live. So be sure to come out for that. And in the meantime, yeah, feel free to book a class. Come and talk about this with me. It would be fantastic. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And I hope you all have a really great rest of your day. Okay. Bye.